Hello everyone. In this session we will start chapter 6. We will continue with objects and classes. And in this session we will talk about static variables and static methods. Static variables and static methods, just like you can have variables like integer count, integer x, integer y in your class. You can also have variables that are declared as a static. And the meaning of static variables, it means they belong to the class as a whole and not to the individual object. So to declare any static variable, you have to include the keyword static. And remember, a static variable is shared by all of the objects of the class. If you need to declare any variable that is of type static, the way you have to do it, you will have to say private, include the keyword static, the data type, for example, integer, the variable name, for example, count, and the initial value. Because as we mentioned, it's shared between all the objects, so always we will have to start with the initial value. Let's start with this example that will show how to have static variables and methods in a class, and then we will try to find the output in order to know the meaning of static variables and methods. So we have a class, and the class is called the static student. So I have public class static student. The variables we do have here, we have private double GBA, private long ID. So these are just like the normal variables we usually declare. So GBA of type double and ID of type long. The new variable we have is a private static string university equals UOB. So what we are doing here, we are having a variable named university. It is of type string. The new keyword static is included, which means now university is not individually for an object. It's shared between all the objects, and the initial value is UOB. On the other hand, GBA and ID, they are private for each object. We have a method named setUniversity. This method is a void method and a static as well. So the meaning of a static, its mean is shared between all the objects and it's public. It will take string new name. It will take that new name and save it in university. So for example, if the new name is XYZ, it will take XYZ and save it in university. So university will be called XYZ, which means all the objects will have the university as XYZ. We have another static method, public static string get university. As a get method, it will return the university. So whatever the value we have, it will return it. Again, we have static. It means this is a static method. We have a method public static student. So just like we discussed last time, if the method name is having exactly the same as the class method, it means now this is a constructor. And because this is empty constructor, it means this is the default constructor. It will initialize ID to the following value, and also it will initialize GBA to 0.0. Public static student long new ID double new GBA. So this is again a method that has the same name as the class, which means I should have the new ID and the new GBA. We will take the new ID, save it in ID. In new GBA, if it is not valid, not between 0 and 4, we will output a message. Otherwise, we will say GBA equal new GBA. Similarly, I have public void set student. It will take a new ID and new GBA. It will assign the value of the ID. Again, we will check the GBA if it is not valid. Otherwise, we will use the value. Just to recall from the previous session, constructor, in this case static student, is called whenever we create a new object. Set student we can call it by saying the name of the object dot set student. We have two get methods, get ID, get GBA. They will return the ID and the GBA, ID of type long and GBA of type double. So we have public long get ID, public double get GBA. And the printing method, this is a void printing method, and of course it's public. All what we will do, we will output the value of the ID, GBA, and then university. And this is the end of the class. So we have a class, a static student. We will have GBA and ID as private variables, but we will have university as a static. We have two methods, set university, get university. They are static. We have a constructor, default constructor, constructor with parameter. We have a set method. We have two get methods and the printing method. Now let's go to the main method and try to find the output. So we have another class, a static student demo, public static void main, and then we will start by creating an object. So the first statement it mentions, the first statement it says, you have to go and create an object st1 of type static student, which is the public class we just have discussed. So I will have an object st1 and we should have it as of type new static student. So if we go back to the class we have, the class static student, the variables we should have, we have GBA, we have ID, and we should have university. So when we create our object, we should have ID, we should have GBA. They are local within st1, but remember university has been declared as a static, which means when I declare university, I have to use it just like shared, and the initial value will be UOB. So it's not for st1 only, it's all for all objects of the same class. Now, because we mentioned the new student and then empty brackets, it means I have to call the constructor. So always remember, especially when you have output questions, whenever you have a new class name, then you have to call the constructor. And because in this case I have empty brackets, I will call the empty constructor. So if we go back and check what is the empty constructor, this is the empty constructor. What do we have to do? We have to initialize ID to 2017-01, GBA to 0.0. So we will go there, and for ST1, we will have 2017-01 and GBA as 0.0. So we are done with the step number 1, which is object ST1. Let's move to the second statement. The second statement, it says create another object st2, again of the same class. So again, I will have another object st2. I should have the following. I should have ID, and I should have GBA, and I should have university. But remember, university has been declared as a static variable, which means this is shared. So it will be used by st1 and also it will be used by st2. And both of them, they have the initial value, which is UOB. Now we will continue by saying a new static student. And in our case here, we have two values. So it means I have to call a constructor with parameters. We have to send 2016 and then double one and double one and then 3.5. So we will go to the previous slide. Here, which constructor we have to call? We have to call the second constructor because I have parameters. So I have here the new ID 2016 ones and ones, a new GBA is a 3.5. Now it says ID should equal a new ID. So go to your ID, it should equal 2016 ones. Go and check the GPA, the new GPA. The new GPA is a 3.5. 3.5, is it less than 0 or greater than 4? It's not. So I will go to else, and GPA should equal 3.5. So it means my object will have the following value. It will be initialized to 2016 once, and the GPA as 3.5, which means now we are done with this. Now I have to execute st1.print and st2.print. The printing method from the previous slide, this is the printing method. I have to print the value of the ID, GPA, and university. So here when I say st1.print, it means go to st1. What are the values inside st1? So if we check the output, I have 2017 zeros 1, 0, and 0. So we have here 2017, 0 and 0, and the value of the university UOB. So this is the first line we will get. When you say st2.print, the values you should have as follow. You should have 2016 ones 3.5 and UOB again. So 2016 ones 3.5 and UOB. So this is the second output we have. So st1.print will print ID and GPA that are local for st1, and it will print university which is shared. st2.print, it will print ID and GPA which are again local for st2, but it will print also university which is shared. So we are done with these statements, the printing statements. Now let's go to st1.setStudent and let's take these values. This method will call setStudent and it will call it for object st1. I have to take these two values and I have to save them in ID and GPA. So remember, we are calling for st1. So go to st1, take the new values. So I have to have new values for ID and GPA. So the ID will be 2015, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the GPA 3.78. So this is the meaning of the set student. Now, as we are done with this, remember set student, it will deal only with the given object. So I'm not changing the shared variable, which is university. Now st1.print and st2.print, you will do the printing again of the values. So what is inside st1? We have 2015, 3.78, and university is still UOB. So that's why here we have 2015, 3.78, and UOB. The values of st2 are unchanged. So we have 2016, 3.5, and UOB as well. Now let's go and call the method setUniversity. The method setUniversity has been declared in the previous slide as a static method. It says setUniversity and it has been defined as a static. So the way we can call this method, we can call it in a three different ways. We can say st1 dot setUniversity, or we can say st2 dot setUniversity, or we can use the class name just like here they are using it. They are saying static student dot setUniversity. So all of these statements, all of them, they will do the same job, which is call the method and change the value of the university. So we will take the new value, which is UOBCS, and we will save it in university. So this will be changed. And we will call it as UOB-CS. And again, remember, this is a shared variable, so the value will be changed for st2. Also, it will be changed for st1. And this will happen whether you are calling using the class name, or you are calling by saying st1 dot, or by saying st2 dot. All of these three will do the same job. Now go and do the printing for st1 and st2. You will notice here that when you do the printing, both of the objects will have the new university name, which is UOBCS. And of course, ID and GPA, they have their own ID and GPA. So to remember, the things that we have to remember out of this exercise as when we declare our class and we have static members, they are shared, and we can have static methods as well. When we declare when we use it in the main method, whenever we use the objects, remember to include the static variables as shared variables. So they are common, they're more like a global, and they are affecting all of the objects. So just remember, static variables are shared by all of the objects of a class. We have the following example. This is one of the previous exam questions. It says here you have public class variable, and inside it you have two static methods. Static integer count 0, static integer number of variables 0, and private integer value. Then you have public variable. Variable is the name of the class. So this is a constructor with parameter. It will take the value and save it, and it will increment number of variables. Public void increment, it will increment count. Public integer get variable, it will return the number of variables. Get value, it will return value. Get count, it will return count. And then from the main, we have to create objects, and then we have to follow the statement. So what I do suggest that take 2 to 3 minutes, try to find the output by yourself, and then we will come back and we will find the solution together. So let's go and do the class together. So we will have the following in the main method: variable object 1 and variable object 2. So we will do it in this way. I will have object 1, we will have object 2 created, and when we say object 1, it means I should have value, and I should have number of variables and count. And number of variables and count, they are initialized to 0 as a static variable. So we have count 0, number of variables, static. Inside object 1, I will have value. Inside object 2, I will have value as well. Because here we have a statement that says a new object between bracket 5, it means I have to call the constructor and I have to send the value 5. So it means here take this value 5, save it in value. So we have value as 5, and increment number of variables. So number of variables will be 1. So that's why here always we mention that calling the constructors are very critical, especially in output questions, because if you miss the calling of the constructor, you will miss the increment of the number of variables, and by that it means all the other calculation will be invalid. So we are done with this statement. Let's go to the second one. We have another object, object 2. We will have to call the constructor and we will send 5. So I will call this constructor, I will send 5. 5 should be saved and number of variables should be incremented. So 5 should be saved in the value, number of variables will be incremented and it will be as 2. Now we have integer n equal 20. This is just like a normal variable and the value is 20. Now go and create a new object 3 and a new variable n this time. So we will go and call the constructor. The value we will have to send as 20. So 20 should be saved in the value and again increment number of variables. So here we should have 20, increment the number of variables and it should be as 3. So now you can guess what is the meaning of number of variables. Number of variables, it will calculate how many objects we have created so far. So when we created object 1, the increment was 1. When we created object 2, the number of variables has been incremented to 2. Object 3, the counter has been incremented to 3. If I create object 4, the number of variables will be 4. So it will keep counting how many objects you are creating. Now it says here, go to object 1 and call the method increment. So we will go to the method increment and I will increment count. Count is a static, so it will be shared between all of them and the value will be as 1. Similarly, I will do the same thing and I will say object2.increment. So again, I have to call the method increment count. So this is 2. Remember, it doesn't matter if I am calling increment by object 1 or 2, because at the end count is a static, so the increment will be done for all of the objects. Here we have system.out.println object2.get variable. The method get variable, this is get variable, it will return how many variables you have. So it says go to object 2, this is object 2, get me the number of variables is 3. So the output I will have as 3. System.out.println object3.get value. So it says go to object 3 this time and get me the value. The value that is inside object 3, which is 20. Object3.increment, again call the method increment and increment count. So count will be as 3. And then object3.get count, I have to call the method get count and I will return the value of that count, the latest value we have, which is 3. So we will have the output as a 3. So out of this exercise, we created 3 objects. Individually, each one of them is having a value which is different than the other objects, but they are sharing 2 static variables, count and number of variables. Whenever we change the value of count or we change the value of number of variables, it will be shared between all of the objects. On the opposite side, the value, even if it is changed for one object, it will not affect the other object.